Hello.
Hello.
This is Intersol Russia's new course, CETO, CELTA, Teaching English Online.
Okay.
This is episode 10. My name is Stephen Ligoff. This is Lydia Igorova, and this is Searching for Students. Now, we've discussed in the past how to construct yourself as a better teacher, how to hold yourself in a classroom online. What we haven't actually told you is how to get the students into your virtual classroom. So we have Lydia here today, who is high up within Intersol Russia's framework, I dare say the queen of the operation. And
Thank you, Steve.
and she is going to be here to firstly discuss
How to search students online.
How to search for the students themselves, and also to serve as an exemplar for I teach her children. I teach her children, and we're just going to understand a little bit how to manage your students. So I'll begin.
Okay, let's start.
Let's start. So firstly, yes, the first thing to remember when taking your students, when having your students, finding your students, maintain a strict contact list of your students. Name on Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, names, times of availabilities, and your their email addresses. Make sure that you have these of your students, every single one, so that when you need to contact them, you have the name, you have the email address, you never fumble to reach them. Because of course this is you're overseas, usually this is your only means of contact. Past that, it allows you to contact them again after the class, their course is over.
So you are creating your database.
Essentially,
And
yes.
that is very main thing, and maybe you know about CRM system where you input different information about different contacts, because sometimes you contact people, or maybe your friend or maybe your neighbor, and suddenly that neighbor telling you, okay, I have my friend or my relative who's gonna be your student.
Exactly.
And so on. So it is a network, and you have to just all information you get from your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, and wherever, you put all in your database. It can be taped in Excel, or it can be CRM system. So
Exactly. Always make sure that you have that information at your fingertips if you need, every time. Past that, when you have that database, keep up the correspondence. Make sure that once a month you text your past students, ask them, how have you been? How's university going? You know, what's news? How's your English coming? Just so that you are in mind first and foremost when their friend comes to them and says, I need an English teacher. Always make sure that you are first in mind when your ex-student or current student has heard that someone needs an English teacher. That brings us to the next point.
okay.
Keep a high standard of said correspondence. So, for example, I teach Lydia's daughter, Alia. Now, Alia is a fantastic student. And no, I'm not
Thank
just
you.
embellishing. She is a fantastic student. But at the beginning and end of every lesson, we have a 5-minute meeting, you and I, to discuss where Alia has fallen through, discuss how she's progressed with her homework. You tell me how she's done with her homework. So she cannot wiggle around being lazy, being lying to me.
Or not motivated of some reasons.
Yeah, not motivated. And then at the end of the lesson, we talk about what she's done right, what she's done wrong during the lesson, how we can improve that, and the homework for the coming week. Always make sure that with your student, if they are young enough to be living with their parents and have their parents be a fixture in their life, make sure that you are talking to their parents so they can keep up the success rate of your students keeping with the course, coming back to you again and again, and inarguably most importantly for you, the parent will recommend you.
Of course. So that relationship are very important.
Yes.
Building relationship with your students, with their parents, and that relationship not only a relationship of teacher and student. That's more like you have to be a friend of your student, and your student have to feel himself or herself very comfortable with you. Very comfortable atmosphere. That's important.
Yeah, and we've discussed that in. You will understand that by now. We've discussed that in previous videos. But it is most important that this relationship that Lydia mentions does not stop at the student, continues on to the parent. Because the parent decides whether the student continues with the course. These parents decide who they're going to tell you about, recommend you to. And the parents decide to make everything they say about you worthwhile. For example, you pointed me to essentially two families who are now my other favorite students. Always
Again,
keep
a network. Again, a network you have to build.
Exactly. Build that network. Build those relationships. Make sure that when your name is on everyone's lips, it's a good name. So, how can we maintain that? Keep your standard high, so that the word of mouth, your network, is favorable. So, always thank your students for their time. Thank the parents for having that 5-minute meeting with you. Praise progress. Students will always make progress. Very few students sitting in front of a capable teacher will not make any progress. So always highlight every little bit of progress, because when you're teaching, every bit of progress is a miracle.
Of course.
So make sure that the parents know that, make sure that the student knows that, so that they can value that success. Past that, offer recommendations for practice. So as we discussed, you have to keep up with the parents so that they keep on the homework, recommend areas of practice, recommend areas of growth, so that everyone knows what's going on. And you're not just some guy on the opposite end of a camera 5,000 miles away. No, you are actively involved in the familial education process. And finally, always, and it's a simple thing, but online it's very easy to forget, always make sure that you have email confirmation of the next lesson.
Of course, you have to confirm your next meeting, with your student, and inform about next meeting.
Of course, always inform the next meeting. Make sure that you're clear on what's going to happen the next meeting. Make sure that the student knows realistically where their faults are, where their strengths are, what you're going to work on, and make sure that the parents, again, if they are in the picture, every part of that journey. Make sure that the parents know when you're meeting. Make sure that the parents know what you're learning about. Now, finally, consider your niche. This is difficult. It is difficult, and it usually requires you to teach for several years. But this is realistically the way you successfully market yourself as being more than just some schmuck on the opposite end of the camera. So, what is a niche, realistically? A niche is your specialization. So consider, perhaps you are fantastic at teaching children.
Yes.
The first teacher I recommended to Lydia's family, South African teacher, who is the best educator of kindergarten and year 1, year 2, year 3 students on earth. I mean, she did wonders with your
Sharon.
with Sonia. Sonia was
really
7,
6.
was 6 at the time. Yeah, and she had very little, no grounding in English.
She knows a lot of songs and a lot of jokes and a lot of topics, especially for children. And children just love her. And sometimes I don't understand what they were doing, because sometimes they just talk about her dog who is sitting. I'm telling about Skype lessons with our teacher from Australia. So sometimes they're just talking about her dog, which lies just behind her, and but after that I noticed that the progress of English of my children just growing dramatically.
Exactly, and I can't understand that because this is Sharon's niche. So she's fantastic at teaching young children. I don't yet know what I'm good at.
And what is your niche?
Oh, I'm not so sure. I think I'm quite skilled at teaching business level English. For example, I mentioned I have one student working in the diplomatic corps of the European Union, and he's growing quite quickly in terms of me teaching his business level, Oxford level English. But most teachers will find their niche in something quite simple. Often you'll find that perhaps you are fantastic at teaching communicative, conversational, colloquial English, wherein you are a fantastic bouncing board for a student just trying to learn conversational, functional English. This is the teacher most often found in Moscow, holding groups full of just discussion groups.
I can tell you a very interesting niche and that can be very useful and very popular. I think the pronunciation, just to train pronunciation with Russian students, because we really have our Russian problems in speaking English.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at that in just a few minutes actually, where we're going to be sadly not in the video that's going to make it to the final CELTA course. You'll see that in episode 4.5 actually, so you'll have already seen this. But yes, pronunciation is a fantastic niche to flit into if you have a good ear, if you have a good functional understanding and listening ability to your students' need. It's a fantastic niche to slip into. So by finding your niche, you can adequately market yourself in a much more concerted space, rather than just being some guy teaching English. And just to cap off this short video, it's actually gone to 12 minutes, to cap off this short video, again, the diagnostics. When you first get a student, offer a free lesson where you try to find out where their needs lie, try to find out where their grammatical problems are, their level of vocabulary, their functional conversational level, their pronunciation problems, so you understand what you're doing. Talk to the parent, talk to the student, make sure that you understand what's going on, just so that they are more comfortable entering the course. This is how you go from having a student think that they might be interested to a student and the parent seeing value in hiring you as a teacher. So you remember the first time I took Alia, I had you sit in the room and we talked about her problems, her strengths, and what we thought we should do with her. And she understood, which was good because she was happy she wasn't just working from a textbook. Yes. So she's more motivated because she knows the plan. You also now have peace of mind. And everything's working smoothly. So that is essentially searching for students, keeping students. And I think Lydia has a final few words.
What I can recommend you when you are teaching online, for example, like some specific idea, some specific way of teaching. In this way, you really have to know a lot about how to promote yourself online. I mean, it's great when you have Facebook page and you can tell about some of your features or some of your tasks or some of your stories with your students, and believe me, people will find that page and they will be interested to follow your page, and very quickly they ask you, please give us lessons, we want you to teach us English. So be friendly, and be friendly not only in your life but also in social media as well, and that works, really works. And also there are a lot of online platforms where people are looking for tutors, for teachers of English, for example, repetitor.ru, for example, or some others where you can download your portfolio with all information about your work experience and your education, and also that works. You find new students online or offline. What else? Very good experience if you join online schools. There are a lot of online schools in Russia or abroad. You also send your portfolio them and go through the interview. And if you meet their requirements, they download your portfolio in their database and also provide you with more students online. So there are a lot of ways how you can find students, and we can wish you good luck. And if you have questions and need more ideas, please email us or send us message. We will be happy to help you and tell you more information.
Thank you very much, Lydia. And at least for the CELTA video, this is the end of it. So
Okay.
thank you kindly. And
Now we talk about pronunciation.
now we talk about
You
pronunciation.
want to kill me with that exercises?
Oh, I do. Do you have them on your phone?
My phone is
Your phone is there.
recording our video
Right.
now.
So
Do you have your
I'll pull it up on my phone.
Okay, good.
So this week
Mhm.
I sat with Lydia and her daughter.
Yes,
Oh.
that's crazy tasks and just my tongue and my mouth
Yeah. So
dying after that exercises.
So what we have realistically are a few exercises here that I am firstly teaching your daughter to help her with her pronunciation of English and her confidence in speaking. And of course you approached me and said I would also like some help. So these are mostly geared toward the problems associated with Russian speakers, and it'll just serve as a bit of an example today, because for the basics of pronunciation video that this will be at the end of, this again just serves the basics of what we've been talking about, of finding out the issues with the accent of the people that you're dealing with, and stretching their mouth to fit the English mold, and just running with it. Practice makes perfect, and these are tongue twisters, well, not necessarily tongue twisters, exercises that will stretch that mold. So I'm so sorry for what's about to happen.
Okay, but first I want to say you and tell you that it is a magic. Just watch.
So to begin with, for those watching outside, of course, the Russian accent, the main problem with the Russian accent is it's a very soft-spoken language, contrary to popular belief. You can make your mouth as small as possible and say "извините," and it works. It's a soft-spoken front of the mouth, very low movement language. And English is the exact opposite. It's a very guttural, broad language with lots of emotive movement, and it's very difficult for Russians to adapt to that.
Okay.
Let's begin
Let's begin
with stretching the mouth.
Okay.
And again, the point of the exercises is not so much to teach them how to pronounce particular words. The words don't matter. The idea is to get the mouth used to saying English sounds that are difficult in the language that's usually spoken. The first one is going to be a basic stretching exercise. The next is looking at the phonemes that Russians cannot say, and it's going to be great. So let's begin.
Whenever the weather is cold, whenever the weather is hot, will whether the weather, whatever the weather, whenever we like it or not. I don't like it. I don't really like it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So that was great because it was so bad. It was better than yesterday though. It was actually better than yesterday. Yeah.
You noticed that I have some progress?
Yeah, a little bit. You can say the middle of the word. So Russians, of course, when encountering a word that starts off soft-spoken, flip back into the Russian mold and just, so instead of saying whenever, it becomes whenever. Just a very, light flow. So the idea of the word is finding the soft beginning, the w. The w, where you make no contact with your lips to your teeth, your tongue doesn't do anything but sit at the bottom of your mouth, and you go w.
Whenever.
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 Good. So.
Whenever.
So another problem within Russians is the Russians have the V. The
V.
Yes, the V. The English V, although it does look like a B in Russian. It is not so forcibly pronounced as it is in English. So Russians usually let it drop to a soft W and have trouble fitting the difference between the two sounds and thus drop both. And often when they know that they should pronounce it, the mouth just makes a TH phoneme. So the focus should be on making that connection between your top teeth and your bottom lip. The V. Perfect. So again, whenever.
Whenever.
Ver.
Whenever.
Perfect. Whenever. Always make sure that when you're running through a word, each single syllable is pronounced in the intensity that it should be. Going through, the. Good.
The.
So we've talked at length about the dangers of the two TH phonemes within Russian, the unvoiced and voiced dental fricative. We will look at that in a few minutes, but Lida has already mastered the unvoiced, so that's no problem. The. Perfect. Weather.
Weather.
Good.
Weather.
Good. So again, one must pay attention, especially with your students, in teaching them that the word itself does not matter so much as a flowing concept if they can break it down slowly. Weather.
Weather.
Perfect.
Weather.
Good. So don't worry about the weather. Worry about the weather. If that's easier for the student to say, by all means. Good. So after many times of practice, Lydia will eventually be saying weather. But
Weather.
Weather. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Not so bad. Not so bad already. Yeah.
Training.
Okay. Well, you're cheating. We had a lesson yesterday.
We prepared already.
We did. Another issue within Russian is discerning the difference between a short and a long sound found within a word. Because Russians have no rules when it comes to the length of a letter, a sound. Often making a single sound that's completely alien in English essentially go up and down all around. So I've heard people say, instead of dom, dyom. That's an O. That y is an O.
Oh.
Who the y, dyom. So let's look at identifying this within English. Next word.
Is cold. You mean this one?
Yes.
Cold.
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 So Lydia has had a lot of practice with this, and even then, she still has that little yo, cold.
Cold.
So one must focus on having that be short and sharp.
Cold.
Perfect. Perfect. So that was just the first line of this tongue twister. Whenever the weather is cold, whenever the weather is hot, we'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not.
Okay, Steve.
So,
maybe we give our students one more home task. I mean, one more.
We're going to, we're going to go down to the hell, the one that is hell.
Let's go.
So.
And I will put in comments just
Please.
for everybody to read them and repeat, read and repeat. And if you have problems, email us or send us message. Okay, we don't take so much money, just a little bit. Little bit.
Just we take a flower every second week.
Flower, some chocolate.
Some chocolate. I'd like some chocolate. Yeah. So again, the idea with this, with these tasks, is not so much saying the word correctly, but identifying the phonetic detail and managing to nail that. So you can say cold or cold or whatever, as long as you nail that O, for example.
Oh.
So cold.
Cold.
Good.
Cold.
Exactly. So when you're doing this at home, make sure that you're not focusing on the word so much as the letters. The of the cold, for example. Now, This task we looked at in number 4, episode 4, pronunciation. Here we're going to be doing it with a student, and it's going to be a little bit hilarious. Sorry. So,
clothes in these thoughts with those teeth. It's okay?
no. So, this is part of the previously discussed essential tongue twister or poem-ish, utilized to make Russian stumble. Designed by myself, and I give it to all my students. All my students hate me. So let's go through this bit by bit. We're only doing the first line. This will be in the comments of the video. So, cloth.
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 Good. So Lydia has previously detailed the unvoiced dental fricative, the
Cloth.
and she nails that. She also gets the O now of the short O.
Cloth.
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 Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So she's really nailed that. Russians will usually go cloth for their first try, or cloth, because the unvoiced dental fricative is very difficult. And how do you nail the unvoiced dental fricative? How do you say the
Cloth. Cloth.
Good.
Cloth.
So tongue just under your two front teeth here, and you just blow air. Perfect.
Cloth.
Perfect. Now, this next one is very difficult. You use the voiced dental fricative, which Russians have a particular problem with. Repeat after me. Like a Buddhist monk. So that vibration of your throat, that humming, make that same noise with your mouth in the same position as the
Cloth.
clothes.
Clothes.
Good.
Clothes.
So instead of blowing air, you're making the humming sound, so the voiced dental fricative. So you go v.
Clothes.
So clo, so there's a long O, of course, detailing the difference in English word. Clothes.
Clothes.
Good. So it's difficult for Russians to have that completely alien sound, the v.
The.
Completely alien sound. Quickly go to a simple, softer sound, the s. So, of course, English speakers have this problem as well, but it's found within the language, so it's easily rectified. For us, we go clothes.
Clothes.
Good. That quick pullback. Think about it like a circle. You go clothes as fast as you can. Clothes.
Clothes.
Good. And together?
Clothes.
Perfect. Magic. Absolutely perfect.
I told you.
So, absolutely perfect. And that mastering of the very quick dental fricative, the voiced dental fricative, the v, is paramount to Russians, most people learning English. And moving on, in these?
In these.
These. Long,
This.
Not this. So, long E in the middle of the word. These.
In these.
Good.
In these.
So again, this is a pivotal word in instructing Russians, teaching the difference between this and these. And very similar, very easy to make the mistake, because for Russians the I would seem like the longer sounding letter, where realistically in this sense the E is the longest sound, and it's just a slip up that Russians commonly make. Very easy to rectify. Difference between this and
These.
these. Perfect.
Thoughts.
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 Good. So the or section, so the diphthong, is rather difficult for Russians because it's conjoining of letters that don't make sense together. I had one student say thoughts because there is a G there in thoughts.
Thoughts.
And it's very soft. It's almost a Russian. The or.
Or.
Yeah.
Or.
The or. And then you have the trouble of a T and an S at the end, which is quite sharp. It's corresponding with the soft middle of the word. So, thoughts.
Thoughts.
Good. Perfect. And that mastery of, again, the flow of the word being different from the monotony of normative Russian language is paramount to observe. Thoughts.
Thoughts.
Perfect. Now,
with, those.
okay, so again, short word, very soft, lending to an alien phoneme within the Russian language. Often lends itself to a lispy sh. That's fine. With. Good. Focusing on the unvoiced identificative, the th at the end, is quite difficult.
With.
Better. Good. So again, short word, soft word, Russians tend to get comfortable and flow softly. It cannot be allowed to happen. And then immediately after that, we follow with.
Those.
So the long O, the S at the end, with the voiced identificative immediately after the unvoiced identificative is very difficult for Russians to master. However, Lydia and I hammered this home yesterday, so she's doing quite well, and I can't bring her up on it, unfortunately. But one more time. With those.
Those.
With those.
With those.
Good. Much, much better. It's really good. So,
thank you.
Finally, a word that is incredibly difficult for Russians to say. I've had students who nail the rest of the poem perfectly and still cannot say this word. Please.
Thieves.
Thieves. Good,
Thieves.
better. Lydia is unfortunately a bad example here because yesterday her daughter said, "Niet mama, thieves."
Thieves.
And actually hammered it home much better than I ever could. So that's it today. Those exercises are going to be in the comments down below. We'll subject you to the full poems, but we've only gone through the first line of each because we can't take your entire day. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and see you next year. Bye. Bye bye.